I'm Mike Wilson. I'm the CEO of Havas Media Group, Australia and New Zealand. And for this session this afternoon, we're going to be talking about advertising. And the theme of our discussion is the future of advertising in our cities. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce my interviewee for today's session, Steve O'Connor, who's the CEO of JC&Co for Australia and New Zealand. Good afternoon, Steve.
Thanks, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
I thought we might just kick off by talking a bit about JC&Co as an entity. It will be familiar to some of the viewers today, but perhaps not to everybody. Can you tell us, just to start with, how JC&Co came to be in the Australian market?
Certainly. We came to be in Australia at around about 1997 when we tendered for the supply of street furniture to tidy up Sydney generally in preparation for the Olympic Games, because the street furniture back then was a bit disparate and certainly had been around for a long time and needed to be changed and upgraded. So we won a tender to supply a range of street furniture, including automatic public toilets, bus shelters, retail kiosks, seats and bins. It was a coordinated range of furniture that was designed here and manufactured here, and we commenced that process that contract in 1998, and then from there we've expanded our business to be a supplier of street furniture to a range of other councils and authorities around Australia. And then back in 2018 we acquired a local outdoor advertising business called APN, which was a billboard and transit advertising business and airport advertising business, in fact. So we tripled in size at the end of 2018. So now we provide advertisers with a broad range of outdoor advertising solutions around street furniture, billboards, transport, airports, and also rail advertising as well. So been here for 22 years and looking forward to the next 22.
So you've touched on the two elements of your business, and I'm an advertising guy, so I think of our partnership around sort of a vehicle for advertising. But you've talked a lot there about street furniture, and the other part of your business is around infrastructure. Yeah. Given that we're talking about the future of our cities, can you tell us a little bit about the infrastructure model for JC&Co, both in Australia, and it might be interesting as well just to get a sense of the scale of the organisation globally?
Sure, certainly. We started, or JC&Co started in 1964 when our founder, Jean-Claude Decaux, convinced the Mayor of Lyon to give him a long-term contract for the supply of bus shelters, in that case, where he would provide the shelters free of charge, maintain them free of charge, and to be able to create an advertising network then to resell to brands. So that was the beginning of JC&Co's sort of business model, where we provide products and services in return for the advertising rights. That's since expanded to a much broader range of infrastructure other than just bus shelters. And on the advertising side of things, what he tried to do was that he tried to create a really high quality advertising network that would appeal to some of the top end brands in France initially, so namely the fashion houses like Chanel and Dior and that sort of stuff. And to do that, he needed to get the best locations that delivered the best quality audience, that the structures in which we housed the advertising were really well designed, and that's he used to use and still does use a lot of sort of preeminent designers and architects to design the range of furniture that we have today, and then turn that into an advertising network that we could then attract those types of brands that I just mentioned before. So there's just two distinct parts of our business. Is really the provision of the infrastructure, and then the commercialisation of that infrastructure that enables us to provide it to cities free of charge and maintain it free of charge. From there, the business has expanded, where we now have a broader portfolio of products, where we moved into environments like airports and billboards, etc., and now providing some sort of more pure play types of advertising solutions in addition to that infrastructure element. But the company's always been fully focused on the supply of outdoor advertising. We haven't been tempted to move into other media, albeit that I'm sure that they could have. So we do believe that it's a sector that warrants its own focus, and as a consequence of that, we are now the largest outdoor advertising company globally, and certainly talking about in sort of pre-COVID years, sort of 15,000 employees, 6.5 billion Aussie dollars in turnover, operating in 80 plus countries around the world. So a very big business, and one that the model has served us well for.
Well, you touched then on pre-COVID, and I think before we get into talking a bit about the future, it would be remiss of me not to ask, how's COVID affected your business? And I'm particularly interested in what a number of industries are talking about, is how it's acted as a bit of an accelerator in some ways in terms of changing practices, perhaps to habits that we might all adopt in the future. Perhaps we've got there quicker than we might have done otherwise if it wasn't for COVID, and I wonder if that's the case in your experience.
Yeah, I think it has. I think just sort of concentrating firstly on what COVID has done to us. Obviously, in the sort of business we're in, we rely on people being mobile, being out and about. And in most countries where there was any sort of lockdown whatsoever and audiences were significantly reduced, that limited our ability to be able to generate revenue. And we have suffered very, very badly in some places, more so than others, and in some environments more so than others, depending on how badly that's affected. So if we look at Australia, for example, we suffered quite badly in the second quarter, where we obviously had a national lockdown. Revenues were back in a very, very significant way. They got a little bit better in quarter three, and they've returned a little bit in quarter four. So that's good. I think some environments are more challenged than others. For example, airports, where we've got the advertising rights in some of Australia's biggest airports, and they are very, very challenged. The central business districts of the sort of key cities have also been challenged for reasons that we know. That the city of Sydney is not as busy as it normally would be. Melbourne's been in lockdown. So what's typically been our strength in some of those really premium environments and assets have actually become our weakness a little bit in the course of the last sort of 6 months. But now, as audiences are returning, our revenues are also returning, and there's some green shoots. I don't expect that in 2021 that the revenues will be back to 2019 levels. I think they'll probably still be a bit down or a bit off from 2019, but we'd expect to have a full recovery by 2022. I think. So.
Certainly what we're sensing across the whole spectrum of different advertising markets, from broadcast through to static, it seems to be a consistent story. Is the recovery is kind of underway. I definitely get the sense that that oft quoted bellwether of the economy. I think we are in our industry. And the signs are of a return, but perhaps not to 19 levels. So that's consistent with what you're saying.
I think what we've observed is that I think outdoor has suffered probably the most out of any of the media channels, other than cinema. Obviously, the cinema's been completely closed; they've got no chance of generating any revenue. But and I think as advertisers are trying to recoup some of those lost sales, they're probably putting their money into more sort of transactional types of media, like online and that sort of thing, in the effort of trying to catch up some lost ground. But I think as brands start to realise that they need to start investing again in building brands, outdoor will come back to the fore, because as you know, Mike, outdoor is a very strong branding medium, and we feel that there'll be a good solid rebound in the first half of next year. So bring that on.
Well, I'm feeling that too, and we're going to be the ones spending it. So hopefully everyone can benefit. And tell me a bit about working practices. How you've made changes, firstly to accommodate the COVID impact, but secondly how you think that might have a longer term impact on overall practices.
The first objective we had when the lockdown happened was to preserve and noticing that the revenue was falling away and cancellations were happening, etc., was to preserve our liquidity. So we put a lot of measures in place, as most businesses would have. So that was the initial focus. So I think that will still be a focus for us in certainly the balance of this year and the following year. So that's going to curb our aspirations a little bit in terms of what projects and programs we can put in place for the next year at the very least. But in saying that, I think in some respects it's a good thing, because it has actually, it's required us to really focus on fewer things and do fewer things better. So the things that we are really, really attuned to now is making sure that the customer experience is as good as it possibly can be. So that for us to be able to deliver on that, we're putting a real focus on our systems and processes to make ourselves easier to buy. That requires investment in certain areas. I think that every business that's got a COVID recovery plan would be looking at their technology and how they can improve their technological practices and the investment they make in certain areas of technology to automate more and expedite outcomes more quickly. That is also very much a focus of ours. The business, the outdoor business has been tremendously strong over the last decade, largely fueled in the last half of the decade by the investment in digital signage. So it now constitutes about 55% of total revenues are digital. And we're a little bit behind the average because of some of our legacy analogue products, but we will be spending 100% of our capital allocation on the digitisation of those assets and contracts that obviously still got a way to run that justify the investment, but also provide us the best possible return. So,
how far along the road are you from the conversion of analogue to digital?
I don't know the exact figure off the top of my head, but about 50% of our revenues are digital, 50% analogue, and I reckon that the revenues, that 50% of that revenue probably comes from less than 10% of our signs. So, but in saying that, I think there's probably a long tail there that in time we'll end up chopping off.
Yeah.
But we've also still got a lot of headroom in terms of some of the contracts and opportunities that we can invest in, especially in the small format digital areas, such as in street furniture. And we enjoy a very good contract with Telstra, which we'll be rolling out over the course of the next couple of years. But I think it's got a lot of headroom to grow revenues there.
Well, you're talking about some of the different formats, and you've touched on furniture, and the subject of this FACCI series of seminars is around shaping attractive cities. So let's move on to that a little bit. Looking forward to a post-COVID future when we're all feeling a return to some sort of new positive normality, what are the sort of innovations that you're looking to invest in or develop? And I suppose there may be some pointers from some other markets around the world who've, done some innovative things, and you have the benefit of being the biggest out-of-home company in the world. So, what are you seeing, and what are you anticipating?
We're in a very good position to innovate and develop new products. We have some 300 odd engineers based around the group. That's job is to either improve existing products or create new ones. So, we'll continue to invest in the development of new products, and I think a very strong focus is in integrating digital technologies into some of that infrastructure. So investing in micro mobility type solutions, and also just making existing products more environmentally friendly as well is a big focus of ours.
So Steve, you touched on eco and sustainability, and obviously those are two very newsworthy, important macro factors. Given you're the biggest out-of-home business in the world, how are you going about developing your business with that in mind?
We take our responsibilities with regard to the environment very, very seriously. We have a very comprehensive sustainability plan built around sort of six pillars primarily. About reducing waste, about improving our electricity consumption, environmental health and safety, our role in terms of social practices, etc. We have made some very big commitments at a global level. For example, we have joined the companies that constitute the RE100, which is a commitment to go to 100% renewable energy by 2022. So we are well on the path of doing that. We're also recognised by the CDP, which is the Carbon Disclosure Project, and we're on the A list, which is again a recognition of our commitment to sustainability and sustainable reporting to make sure that those companies that want to do more ethical types of investing are fully au fait with what our practices are. I think at a local level, we are carbon certified. We're carbon neutral certified, I should say, by the Department of Science and Environment. I think it is DSE, and we are obviously fully implementing the broader company policy in relation to those pillars that I mentioned about before. So, I think as a business, we're very focused on it. I think a big part of that is trying to get the staff buy-in. So we are spending a lot of time trying to educate our staff about the importance of sustainability and our overarching strategy. and really get them to buy into the need for us to all pull together to be more environmentally friendly.
And which of your sort of colleagues around the world do you think are doing this particularly well, and we can take some pointers from, perhaps?
I think France seem to be doing it very well. They're also 100% carbon neutral, as we are. I like to think that in Australia that we are as progressive as most countries in relation to our environmental practices. It's something that we've been on this journey now for some time, so it's not new to us. And I'd like to think that we're comparable to anyone else. Yeah.
That's great to hear, and I think sometimes I feel that Australia hides its progressiveness under a bushel a little bit, and sometimes some of our overseas colleagues don't realise, perhaps quite how progressive we are as an industry, and that's certainly borne out in what you're saying. I suppose the counter of that is that sometimes people have big intentions, and they talk a very good game, but perhaps sometimes don't quite deliver it. Have you had that experience as well? Yeah,
it's interesting. I think that one of the criticisms that we would level at the authorities that issue the types of tenders that we respond to for the supply of infrastructure and their maintenance and that sort of thing, they talk a very good game about the importance that they put on environmental principles and sustainability and that sort of thing, but it's very rare that do we actually see any sort of material sort of positive marking towards that type of criteria, which is something that we are, as a group, as a company, very critical about, and we would like to see that elevated in the importance of the criteria that cities put on their supply chain. And because we're supplying a lot of infrastructure that uses electricity, that requires a lot of maintenance, and that's the thing. So I think it's a very, very important part of what we can offer. So more a recognition of delivery rather than just aspiration. Yeah, and I think also just a recognition of the importance that it plays for the planet going forward. Now, these contracts are long-term contracts. They could, in some cases, be up to 20 years. I'm sure the climate's going to be worse in 20 years than it is now. So the more we can do to make sure that we don't add to that issue is important. So I think probably just to wind up this session, we've covered quite a bit of ground. With your positive crystal ball, what are some of the things you think we can look forward to in 2021 from not just JC&Co, but advertising and brand communication in general? I think the advertising industry is alive and kicking, and I think we see cities as being a critical place where our medium has got a role to play in bringing brands alive and promoting products and services and just adding to the vitality of cities in general. I think our sector is a very robust sector, and it'll bounce back strongly. It'll change. It'll become more nimble and more digital. But at the end of the day, brands need to communicate, and I think we're there to help them do that. Great. Yeah. Well, I think on our side of the fence, that completely rings true with the conversations we're having with nearly 100% of our advertisers who are champing at the bit to get back and being active in 2021, and we're helping them on that journey, and I'm sure we'll do that in partnership with you in many, many occasions. So thank you for your time this afternoon, and thank you, and enjoy the rest of the seminar. Thanks, Mike.